Let's go now to Tim Marshall, more on the Ukraine. Tim's a defence analyst. He's author of the book The Power of Geography, and there's a lot of geography involved here, Tim, and there's a lot of power behind it. Fascinating talking to you, Tim. Love to hear your perspective on the Ukraine situation and where you think it's going as we begin. It seems a countdown to Wednesday, where US analysts are saying that would be the perfect day or the perfect time when all the Russian forces will be in place.
I think they will be in place by then. I mean, we could talk about where they are geographically, including the Black Sea. There's landing ships that could land about 60 tanks and at least 3,000 troops, etc., etc. As for, what, Wednesday? About 5:10. I'm not so sure. I think there's going to be a flurry of diplomatic activity this week, including from the Ukrainians, because we haven't actually seen their diplomats going into bat. So have they got anything they can offer? For example, could they state explicitly in a meeting with, say, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, we categorically promise we will not join or even apply to join NATO for the next X decades? Could be enough. Who knows? So what I'm saying is this idea that, it is definite and it'll be Wednesday, I don't think is necessarily true. What I do think is true, though, is there's only one person that knows, and it's not me, it's Putin.
Tim, if you'd be good enough, can you stay where you are? We want to bring in the Ukrainian Ambassador to the UK, Vadym Prystaiko, and we'll come back to you for some analysis straight after. And I want to welcome to the programme Vadym, very warm welcome. Thank you for coming in. You only have to take a look at the newspapers this morning to see how concerned we are here in the West on the situation. Are you worried that we are fanning the flames to this? Are we making things worse for the Ukraine at the moment, or are our efforts welcomed?
And you mean you as the UK, or a couple of yous like United States, Canada, Poland, some Baltic nations? You're not flaring, you're the last line of defense. We have our part to do, we're doing our part. We're also in negotiations, not very much in your papers, but we're doing our part as well. But apart from you, I don't even know who will stand with us.
Yeah, Mr. Ambassador, everybody on our show and lots of shows have their say about your country, and we were getting analysis there from Tim Marshall, who we'll return to as well. People talk about, will your country be invaded or not? How grave do you think the situation is, and do you think Russia will invade?
It's not even a question whether they will. They've been doing it all these centuries, and the last 70 years they've been in fight with us, which already costed us 13,500 people dead, and 7% of the territory. Even Crimea is not that small as people believe. 2 million people were in occupied territory. It's a huge peninsula. So this is not a question for Ukrainians if. That's the question, how stronger the aggression will be, because it's already with us.
Can you hold off any aggression without the power of the West, and how important has Britain's support been to you?
Very good question. People are scared by 130,000 massed at our border. For Ukrainians, we have 250 in the army, another 300 in territorial unit defense. Our reserve is up to 2 million people. It seems like big, serious numbers. We're lacking some very serious capacities like anti-air, for example, or fleet, which was seized in Crimea when the Russian attacked in 2014. So there are some capabilities which we're still missing, but we will definitely put up a very real fight, and Russians know it.
I want to ask you about the issue of NATO. I know that Russia's very concerned about Ukraine joining. There's been some talk that it would be vetoed even if Ukraine wanted to join. But it'd be very helpful to hear what NATO's intentions are. Over the weekend, I know that Ukraine came out and said that the comments from our defence secretary that there was this whiff of Munich, that there was this appeasement towards Russia, was incredibly unhelpful. Is it influencing your strategy on NATO?
Strategy not. Strategy stays with us. The strategy is that we will become a member of NATO, and it is even enshrined, if I may put this word, in our constitution, EU and NATO. What we can think now as a tactics that because we can't get into NATO right now, because we can't expect NATO to come and help us as a family, we are not a member of family for many different reasons. Sometimes we just don't want it there. So we have to find something else which will allow us to defend ourselves, like some bilateral agreements. That's the flexibility we have.
So you're saying you no longer want to be members of NATO?
Strategically, we want member of NATO. If we are allowed tomorrow, today, we will be there. At the time being, right now, because we've been threatened to have war in Wednesday, we have to find something else on top of our strategic goal of becoming. I can't tell when we will become member of NATO, if we become member of NATO.
Okay, you would like to be a member of NATO, but you don't have to be a member of NATO. And if you weren't a member of NATO, maybe that would give President Putin less of an excuse to carry out hostilities. Would that be a face saver from him? Would that be a compromise you think your country could reach and say, this NATO business, let's forget it for a long while?
I was myself ambassador to NATO. I understand how it operates and what the principles within the organization. And the strongest, actually, feature of NATO is not even tanks and nuclear. This is unity of the alliance. Lavrov was complaining that they sent 37 letters to ministers of foreign affairs, but they received one signed by NATO Secretary General. I understand what frustrates him, but that's exactly how small nations like mine can withstand the pressure of big predator like Russia.
Yeah.
And Ambassador, I have to ask you about the situation in Kiev. We've obviously got a number of British civilians there who are encouraged to get flights out if they can. We're hearing that parts of airspace have been closed, that some commercial flights are being diverted already, and indeed rumours over the weekend that the airport itself may well close. Are you able to give us any update on that and any Brits trying to get home as well?
No, I believe that this will be allowed. Airport is not closed, the airspace is not closed. Although we are taking care of people in our airspace, remember what happened to MH17 when the airplane was shot down on our territory by rebels supported by Russia. But still, we believe that we have this responsibility to protect anybody flying over our air. There's not much, but KLM, for example, announced that they will shut down the flights, and some other. I just don't want to create more panic. But airports are open, and people can get back home when they are.
But Your Excellency, it's quite poignant listening to you saying that because, people can get back home. You're stationed here in London, and I'm sure you've got a family circle that is still in the Ukraine, and we talk about the possibility of war on Wednesday, possibility. That must be very difficult for you being separate or apart from family.
It's totally bizarre, this feeling that you are so far from your home. I have my mom, she's in Kiev, my family, my brother with his family, with kids and everything. What I can tell them that we are trying our best to avoid this war. And even talking to you, that's something we are trying to bring to your public, to your political leader. Guys, we might be under full-scale attacks, not just new war, full-scale attack, which will bring enormous deaths to both sides. Can we still do something?
OK, look, we've only got about 30 seconds left on the programme, but I just wanted to know if you had a message for the Russians, for Vladimir Putin, succinctly, what would it be? That's
why we are not backing up. He has to find something, the compromise will here. We will compromise, not on the principal things like NATO or our future in the West.
OK.
Your Excellency, I just would like to bring in our political analyst who's been watching that, Tim Marshall. Tim, we'll talk again after 9 o'clock. But just, you've heard the ambassador talk here about the dilemma and his analysis of the situation. What do you make of what he has said?
I think the very fact that the very distinguished ambassador is sitting in your studio tells you that this is the beginning of a week-long diplomatic effort. And this time, the Ukrainians will be heavily involved and publicly involved. I think we will see some sort of meeting between the Russians and the Ukrainians. And I completely respect the ambassador, but he knows he answers to the foreign minister, and the foreign minister answers to the president. And if they feel there is some sort of wiggle room on NATO, NATO itself cannot say that Russia gets to choose who is and isn't. But Ukraine could make that gesture, although I think that is a very, very hard gesture to make, because if you do make it, I think in the long run, you're saying we bow to Moscow, and that's something Kiev can't really do. Tough week.
Tough week. Tim, thank you very much indeed. Mr. Ambassador, appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
For speaking to us. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.